That's right. Welcome everyone to Your Desk University, bringing you live learning with AEC Tech experts directly to your desk. My name is Tim and Hazel. I'm a senior technical designer at Walter P. Moore. Tonight, I'll be your host as we continue this great series with an incredibly gifted panel of AEC Tech experts. Starting next week, we will have 3 other hosts rotating with me. I'm grateful to this team: Dana DeFilippi from Smith Group, Kyle Martin from Gensler, and Jared Friedman from Walter P. Moore will each rotate through as hosts in the coming weeks. Another huge thanks to some of our team. You know me by now. The others at the top here have been a huge part of the launching team. Lebo Lee from AEC Lab. Not only did they just launch their BIM consultancy, but he's currently hosting and managing our website in his spare time. Jared Friedman from Walter P. Moore has been helping collect speakers, working on the web framework, and you can give him credit for our great graphics. We have John Skippers of Adaptive Studio and co-organizer of Dynamo DC plus Grasshopper and Automation. He really helped Your Desk University get started, supports our live streaming, and co-leads our user group outreach. Thank you to this team. Next week, we have Marcelo from John A. Martin Associates. Few people like Sharon Madonna need only one name, and Marcelo is one of them. He's regularly a top speaker at conferences, and Dana will host him next week as he talks about storyboarding and delivering technical presentations. Bring your questions tonight. As always, we've loved the interactive part. You can use the chat over here, and we will try to get to the core of the questions that come in. Of course, if you aren't able to be with us live, we welcome you as well, and look at your feedback below. Please comment below and we'll try to respond to your comments later as well. And now to our first panelist, Cesar Escalante. He served as Project Design Technology Director at Gensler San Francisco and worked for HOK as Regional Design Technology Manager in Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, where he provided technical leadership in the design technology strategy, execution, and delivery of super complex multi-million-dollar projects. He's a faculty at the Academy of Art and University in California and the founder and coordinator of the San Francisco Computational Design User Group. I'm sure many of you are attending as well today. Welcome, Cesar. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. Yes, outside of my work, I like to hike, explore nature, take care of my 3 dogs. I'm a big fan of science documentary, PBS Nova. In 2007, I got into this line of work as a result of a recession. And during my regular time, I'm asked a lot of questions about software standards. And as you can see, I love plants as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. Our second panelist is Aaron White. He's a structural engineer specializing in delivering large, complex, and fast-moving projects. As Walter P. Moore's Director of Digital Practice, he works to improve all aspects of the firm, with a heavy focus on digital development, standards, and group-wide adoption for project delivery and execution. Aaron, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Tim, and sure. Good evening, everybody. Outside of work, and I guess at work, I'm a dad of 3 and a husband. Like Cesar, I like to get out away to nature to kind of recharge. And on the weekends, I'm kind of a warrior woodworker. I like to design and build things, but I never have the patience or discipline to actually finish them well. So I have a lot of unfinished projects or halfway done projects. Got into engineering originally because I loved roller coasters and Legos, like most engineers. And as far as technology, got into this role after a kind of a career in project management and delivering really complicated projects. And I always gave my teams kind of the room to explore, find better ways of doing things. So when I got tapped for the role of Director of Digital Practice, it was kind of a natural fit. Some of the questions I get throughout the days are, hey, do we have a tool that does this? Or is somebody already working on a related tool? Getting invited to a lot of kickoff meetings for projects, and then even into the weeds about questions like, hey, if we've got a grade beam that needs to get to detailed LD 350, how do I do that?
Thanks. Welcome. Ryan Cameron is our third panelist, and he's currently leading digital practice efforts at CMBA Architects. His work range in practice from data analysis, data strategy, parametric modeling, and data-driven design. He is evidence-based design certified as well as a practicing architect in several states. He's a technology enthusiast with degrees in engineering and architecture. He's very active in the community on forums discussing creative passions. And many of us know him for his magazine-like handouts at conferences. Welcome, Ryan. Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Awesome. Hey, thanks for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. I'm trying to think, what do I do? I challenge the status quo in my spare time. So what you might think that I do in my free time is basically what I do for my job as well. I'm really passionate about design technology. And so a lot of people don't realize that I've actually been married for almost 9 years now, and I have two boys, ages 3 and 6 at home. So you might hear them later tonight knocking on the door. But again, in my spare time, when I'm not practicing architecture, you can commonly find me helping people overcome their technology issues. And again, I do this by challenging the status quo. Some ways I challenge the status quo are by hosting spontaneous hackathons, showcasing new technology to replace outdated ideas, or just including some thoughts to provoke a group to think differently.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Welcome. So, all right, to get this started, we're talking about digital transformation. What does digital transformation mean to you? Cesar, go ahead and kick us off if you don't mind.
For me, digital transformation is at the core of any organization survival. In my opinion, is the integration of digital technology into the core areas of business practice. And it's fundamentally how we operate and deliver value in the product we create to our customers. It's also a permanent way of challenging the status quo, like Ryan does on a daily basis. Experiment with new technology and get also comfortable with success and failure, which is also part of the process. I think digital transformation, it's directly related to cultural environment in an organization where needs to be built on empathy, and because with empathy we can build trust, and with trust we can drive change. And so that's how I understand digital transformation.
Okay. Yeah, I'm totally on board with that. So the way I break it down is we've got a lot of people listening in right now, from anywhere from like really cool tech type person to maybe a CEO type level. So I try to take a step back and say, look at it as a fancy way of saying you plan to modernize your organization by radically rethinking how your firm's culture embraces technology. It's not scary. You're probably doing some of it already, like collect data and migrate your information. And so if you remember back in the day when this industry was hand drafting, those were the tools, and archive was a box in a storage unit. We were using a product called paper. You were put in charge of 1, maybe 2 sheets, and these sheets, you were responsible for knowing everything on the sheet. So, and then it's progressed into more of a digital culture. So like I said, you're already probably doing some of this already, but we're trying to push a little bit harder for that.
And I think a key is the word transformation. For me, that means something that's unfamiliar to what it looked like before. So it's not just like a snake shedding its skin. It's a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. So if you're delivering, say maybe the same old drawings with just a slightly different process, that's not a digital transformation. But if you're delivering something that's unfamiliar with different roles and different processes and having really good outcomes, then that's a transformation. And then I think that's what I think of digital transformation is wholly rethinking the entire process.
Yeah, thanks guys. And tonight we'll talk about some initiatives. We'll talk about culture. We kind of have a wide array of different questions. So hopefully we can get to all those and any questions that come in. We're monitoring those. All right, so for the next question, when you're thinking about initiatives and you're thinking about selecting or creating a new initiative, what questions do you ask your team? Are there projects that are best for new processes? How do you decide how to kick things off?
I can answer that. I can think of maybe 3 fundamental questions. How First one is, how does the new process of the new technology brings value to any point of the business practice, whether that is a new way of drafting or delivering a digital document, whether it's marketing, whether it's business management. How does that add value? The second question will be, is there any risk that we're mitigating with the adoption of this new technology that will make worth the investment? And maybe the third question will be, how does this process increase efficiency? And so the answer of these three questions are really required to give a value proposition to anything we put in place within our organizations.
Okay. Ryan, Aaron, anything to add to that? And how you start?
Sure, I'll give Aaron a chance.
Things off.
Yeah, I like to ask, if you had more time and fee on the project, what would you spend more time doing? What would you really dive into? What are the creative areas that you really want to focus on? And then to Cesar's points, maybe a couple of the more mundane questions are, what are the things you're going to do like hundreds of times on this project? Or where do you expect the owner or client to churn, that we can have some workflows that'll help us, just kind of be very responsive and iterate throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll just add something for 30 seconds here, but I'm over prepared for this today, so I won't share my screen. But I have a whole slew of questions, and it's really to get to the 10-minute value proposition of what that initiative needs to do. And so that could be anything like, what habits will we have to overcome in order to make that transition successful? What supporting evidence will need to be researched? What outside resources will be needed to help? How scalable is it? Who does the idea serve? What support roles are required for this initiative? And really, a lot of it comes down to testing and taking kind of a gamble, right? So that's why we would host a lot of hackathons, or whatever you want to call it, if it's a hackathon or not. It was a cool name. You've got to be able to test and break the system in order to get these initiatives off the ground. Yeah. So anyway, I'll post.
Yeah, no, that's good, and I think it leads very much into like, how do you then get it adopted? So you might have a great initiative, someone might have a really good idea, but you don't get the buy-in, you don't promote it. Can someone speak to maybe what are some ways you found to help promoting an initiative or into your firm's culture?
I got an idea.
Go for it.
Try not to promote it, squash it. Try to do everything you can to battle test it, to get it to work, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get a chance or a shot to succeed. You're going to have so many more failures than you probably will have successes, and that's okay. That's great. There's opportunity in that, but you really have to battle test the initiative, because you don't know, I don't know, we don't know all the different problems that it creates, or all the different solutions that it creates. So that's my goal with the company, is to get a small group and pick it apart. And that's not my advice. Somebody gave me that advice and it just made sense. And pick it apart so that you don't launch something that you can't actually produce, which is great, because then you won't have a failure. So that's just a different way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I would add to that as well, that just like you have mentioned, the need of looking at the initiative from different angles is to strategically run it by a wide variety, a representation of the different type of population you have within your firm. You don't want to, for example, just have designers look at initiative. You also want to bring into the conversation people from IT, people from management, people from the trenches, from marketing. The more diverse is the outlook, or the variety of point of views in the way an initiative could forecast its outcomes, the more quality the results. And this can only happen, if we have in place a very collaborative, communicative culture that allow for these conversations to happen.
Yeah. How do you guys decide? We're going to move on to culture in a second. We've already kind of started on that, but how do you decide when an initiative hasn't succeeded? If it needs to be stopped, if it needs to be transitioned, when do you make that call? Sometimes you might be really invested in something. Your team might be invested in it. When do you decide to make that shift or kill a direction you're moving?
Tim, and I guess I'll take a stab at that one initially. I think when I see an initiative kind of failing, is it during the development stage, if there's not a lot of passion around it for the developers. I mean, everybody's busy. And so like if I'm saying, hey, can you spend a little bit of time on this, and then 2 weeks go by and they haven't spent any time on it, I know there's probably an issue here that they're not really passionate about it. And I need to check in and really figure out kind of what's going on. And if that kind of continues, then maybe we're barking up the wrong tree with this initiative. And the contrary is also true, that if they have an initiative they're really passionate about, they'll find time to work on it. They'll work the weekends or late at night on their couch or something. So that's a pretty good indicator as well, or at least early indicator for me about certain things.
Anybody else want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, there is a stage during the pilot of an initiative that I call it the pilot purgatory, and this is where either you have the initial measure of success of whether a initiative is grounded to continue forward, or it's really a bad idea and you can't really continue with that. And so the faster you get to that determination, the better it is to get rid of the ideas that don't have any potential and really crop the ones that are critical for the organization.
Yeah.
My only answer is really, really quick. Go read The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. Answers that question beautifully.
Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. So when you're working with your culture, with your specific company, because we all work at different companies, what are some common challenges you see when you're putting forth ideas to be implemented? We've kind of started talking about it, but can we dig a little bit more into that?
Yep, I'll go.
Go for it.
So I always treat these things like, and I've been saying this for a little while. Treat your initiative like a startup, right? So there's like you need to come up with. Go do a Google search right now, everybody, for Lean Business Canvas, and you don't have to pick it apart and do everything, but it'll say what is the problem, what's the solution, what's the unique value proposition, what's the unfair advantage it gives to your firm. What customer segments, and that might be your clients, so that might be your internal clients. What's it going to cost, and your revenue stream for it. And there might not be a revenue stream, there might not be a channel for it, but it also helps address early adopters. It also helps address how to put that team together, and it also kind of gives you a little reminder for existing alternatives to that initiative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Aaron, Cesar, anything to add there?
I would say when initiatives lack the depth of a vision frame at a strategic level, it has a higher rate of failure. And this is like a combination of bottom-up strategies, top-down oversight. It's really critical for a successful story. When things are not rooted in a single vision, they can be doomed.
Yeah. Aaron, earlier you talked about the idea that if kind of the developers weren't excited about a new initiative, then you probably knew it might not have legs because they weren't really passionate about it, and so you might wait for somebody else, or you might change or modify that idea. When you're working with other people in your company, kind of the two sides of it, the really excited people, and the people who maybe aren't really on board with moving in a specific direction. How do you guide or direct? Do you guide and direct these people? I don't want to kind of make an assumption.
Yeah, I think this is where knowing your staff comes in really handy. So depending on like the initiative or the development tool or the tool that's being developed, I may go to different staff members because I know they're passionate about certain things. So like if it's a sustainable design tool, it's going to kind of go to project manager A, B, and C. If it's interoperability solution or maybe a downstream sharing tool, it's going to be project managers X, Y, and Z and somebody else. So I kind of know what people are already leaning towards, what they're open to, and kind of what they're closed down to. So you can kind of pick and choose your initial pilot audience. That way, if you kind of know everybody. But I think one of the big challenges you have is a lot of the initiatives can get shut down by any one person along kind of the chain saying no. To get it through everything, everybody has to say yes. So even if you have one person who's kind of maybe uninformed or had a bad day or whatever, they can quash that initiative on an individual project or larger than that.
Yeah. Ryan, you talked a little bit about lean. Can you say anything maybe more about what lean is specifically, or other management practices, management systems that you've used? And I want to pause there for a second. Let's not just list different management practices, but like what are some specific ways that a particular one is being that you're using?
Quit spending money. That's lean. So
Okay.
really honestly, a lot of it is creating a fun activity. That's the way I looked at it, was creating like internal hackathons. A couple pizzas, ask for a 90-minute lunch hour from your senior management and say, hey, we don't know what we're going to do, we don't know what we're going to break, but we've got some really amazing digital natives, and we want to do this kind of activity and just break something.
Mm-hmm.
We're just I don't know if it's angst or what it is, but we don't like the process that we're doing now, and we want to see what we can do to break it and create a new one, or at least separate out the box of parts and figure out what's going to take off from there.
Aaron, Cesar, I'd love a little bit of thoughts from your side as to like specific aspects of different systems you've incorporated.
Yeah, so we've been on a lean journey for about 10 years and been involved in Lean Construction Institute. So when I think about lean, it's really about eliminating waste throughout the entire process, whether it's time allotted, as Ryan kind of talked about money. It could be just redoing work, rework, or overwork, over designing something. So a lot of the focus that I have in terms of broad adoption is really distilling our level of effort down to the minimum it needs to be to actually get the product kind of out the door, which is getting drawings out or getting a model completed. So I kind of attack everything with that mindset about eliminating waste. I target on my projects that, hey, everyone should be working about 45 hours a week. We're not looking at 60 hours a week. That's human resource. Just burning people out. That's not lean either. So that's kind of the lean approach that we have.
I would add also that, and in my experience, I've served companies of different sizes, and one thing that becomes very clear is one size doesn't fit all. And in order to properly evaluate the effectiveness of any initiative, it's really important also to understand how you're going to measure. If you cannot measure something, you don't have anything. And establish early, whether this measure of success are strategic, meaning time and how much value, or if there are operationals, whether we're talking about gains in productivity or we're able to scale it quick enough. Or in general, the cost of implementation. And so having any type of measure of success, it's from the very beginning, it's a requirement to understand the effectiveness of any measure that's in place.
Yeah. Does your looking at your three companies, do you find that the culture inside the company or the company structure has an impact on the success of of the way things get adopted, or do you find that it's really just mostly about like good initiative, bad initiative, or is there like a company dynamic that makes it that contributes a lot to it? That's not a yes. That is a yes or no question, but work with me on it.
Yes.
Thanks. Exactly. How do you think your culture kind of like feeds that adoption or changes?
Well, I guess I'll go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, I was just going to say, ask one question to the audience, which is, do you understand the dimensions of the problem? And that's just how I'm going to leave it right there. It's just kind of as a thought for everybody to kind of just let it bubble up to the surface. Do you understand the dimensions of the problem of what Tim just mentioned? So that's how I'm going to leave that.
Okay.
Because we got to hustle, guys.
We're moving.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan, I would add also that what is the common understanding of the problem by the entire organization? Because every person can have a different understanding of what is the end goal, and so I think this is where leadership craft a vision that a vision of an initiative based on the common understanding from everybody. If different sections of of the company have different, like you said, different understanding on what is the problem we're trying to address, then I think it's doomed.
Yeah. Aaron, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I was just going to echo kind of what Cesar said. Is if we've painted a clear vision for the staff about where we're heading 3 to 5 years, then we can kind of connect the dots for the initiatives and how they fit into that long-term vision. So it's not just change for change's sake, or here's a new tool. Oh, Aaron came up with a new tool. Of course, he wants me to use it, but you can really paint the picture for them why they should be doing it.
Yeah. Just want to let you know we're getting a couple comments coming in. No questions yet, but we've got a lot of people, including I think Bill from Evolve Lab, that's sending you guys all thanks for doing this. So you guys can kind of get some of that interactive part of it. As we move into the next section, I do want to pause because these are 3 guys who love books and are really focused on reading. And so at the end, they're going to share their favorite books. And I think I heard something about a giveaway. So I'm going to stop there, pause there, and get back to our next topic. I just want to throw that in there because I didn't mention that at the beginning. So our next topic is technology and recessions. We could also call this cultural shift and recessions. We can call this lots of different ways. But in 2008, it seems like BIM really took off. It seems like the people who really had time to invest in it really were able to take off and capitalize and really took advantage of it. Do you think there's a parallel in today's era? And is there going to be some kind of advancement in algorithmic design, which potentially might be the next step of that?
I think it's going to be a definite involvement in design because it's going to be on everybody's mind. Like this is a 1 in 100 year type of event, and so you're already starting to see some algorithm type things coming up where people are now sitting 6 feet away. That changes workspace, right? And so there's like a little dot and then a little circle bubble around people. I saw this great little animation. I can't remember who did it, but I think you're going to start to see some influence there. But it's still, there's a lot of gray area in what's going to happen in the next 5 to 6 months of what that's going to be. It's definitely a different type of, it's not a recession yet, but it's definitely going to be a different type of economic impact.
Well, in the light of these events, and I just was released from Gensler as of yesterday, so I'm actually looking for new opportunities. Which speak of how fragile the current systems of work are in place. If anything, I think recessions showed us how to, or push us how to transform ourselves to become better persons, become better professionals, learn from our pasts, But again, in light of these events, I think one thing that is very evident is that this notion that data is no longer centralized, but it's the centralized network of linked information. It's what's happening with everybody working from home or everybody working from different dispersed regions. And so the notion that you need to be in a centralized place to do work is highly challenged nowadays. And this can only is possible now because we have now access to cloud computing and technology that enable us to manage big data, transferring light speed from cloud servers to our machines. And so having adopting that mindset that this may be the new normal will certainly get us prepared for the next round of technology.
Yeah. And in light of that, Cesar, I really want to say thank you for being on the show. We're so glad to have you. I think it shows an immense amount of character to join us and talk about this and initiatives when you're going through this. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Enjoy your time off because it's going to be short.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's okay. It's part of the waves of a recession. This happens. We just need to be nimble and willing to transform ourselves to the next version of it's like the change of software, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I recommend everybody write a recommendation for Cesar on LinkedIn, starting with me. So I'm going to do that. Everybody get on it and get that going.
Yeah. And I think that goes to the reality of the situation we're in, right? And that's kind of part of this training series is to really support people at a time when learning more can really help us as an industry more come together. Because I know like the people who've launched this with me, we've been helped so much by the open source community. And so to give back in this way. So yeah, thank you so much again for being honest and just sharing that with us. It's really cool to have that kind of participation. So Cesar, actually, you mentioned a little bit about the 2008 recession and its impact on your work in the past. I'm going to pause there because you just, would you like to share, feel free to say no, would you like to share more about how 2008 impacted your work? And then, Aaron, I'd love to hear if you've had any of the similar thing after he's done.
Yeah, thanks for asking that because back in 2007, I was in a very similar position. I was working in small firms as a practitioner. I got laid off. I had very limited perspectives in the market. I decided to reinvent myself by acquiring new skills. Back then, I went and took a course of Revit from a mechanical engineer who basically didn't know much about how to put together buildings. But I love the potential of what Revit was. And while I was in laid off, I started, I just placed a little ad on Craigslist that I was tutoring people in Revit for, I think, $15 an hour. And I started getting just one person. Then suddenly I had 5 people over the week. And then suddenly I have a whole classroom of people trying to learn Revit. And that define a new moment in my career because then I move away from the practitioner and focus more on the technology side. And just like we were able to transform ourselves in these periods of downturn, I think this is an opportunity as well to, like I mentioned, to become the next version of yourself. And so
yeah. And then you've gone on and started the San Francisco Computational Design Institute along with a bunch of other people. And we all know that's one of the largest user groups. And we really love the content that comes out of it. Thanks so much. Aaron, 2008, how did the recession impact your work?
Yeah, so in 2008, I was managing projects, and fortunately, one of the projects I was working on was a really large sports project, and the funding came in and maintained. So we were able to just keep cranking on that project. But as a firm, we were really dealing with the unknown of projects stopping and starting and going on hold. We had one project that might have had 30 or 40 people working on it, and the one morning they just call up and say, okay, that one's on hold. So now you've got to find stuff for people to do. And so I think aligning like initiatives and getting initiatives underway and having like a backlog of wish lists and initiative lists was really important, because then we were able to leverage those people that did become somewhat available, at least part-time, to push forward initiatives, complete initiatives, and that really kind of set us up as a springboard to kind of, as Cesar just said, reinvent ourselves a little bit. And that was the time when we laid the foundation for our custom interoperability solution coming during the recession. And then coming out of that, then we were able to springboard that into really digital practice.
Thanks. We actually have a really great question that just came in from Evolve Lab. So in 2008, we had Revit to help those people get onboarded and make a difference in that downturn. Do we have something similar? What advice do you have for those in the industry during this downturn? And we don't really know what this will look like or what the future will look like, but right now, what advice would you give to people? And then I think we'll move on to our next topic. But please keep throwing questions in as we go.
The thing that I would suggest, and it depends on where your career is too, because if you're more in the ready to be at the next level, then it's communication and leadership, and just read some books on leadership. Your Simon Sinek, and they're really good conversation starters too for when you're interviewing at firms. Revit, yes, I mean, for the most part, a lot of people learn that. I would say get into coding a little bit if you're at that kind of level. There's nothing wrong with that, even if it's just like low-level Grasshopper Dynamo stuff. That's definitely a great community to help you. And I think it's a lot different now, 10 years later, in terms of the community. I think recessions are going to have less impact on job loss, because I think people are going to get picked up a lot quicker because of the talent that they have, such as, a really good friend of mine, like Cesar. Enjoy your time off, man. You're going to be back to work. I can't predict that, but yeah. So go ahead and learn whatever you're passionate about, right? If you're ready to go to that next step, read some books on leadership. It's tough. It's not easy. About building teams. Yeah. That's my suggestion.
Aaron, Cesar?
Yeah, I might have a slightly different vantage point just from where I sit. And I think, I've been thinking a lot about how this is impacting our construction partners. Ryan was talking earlier about the 6-foot rule. What does that mean for a construction site? And how can we, as designers, help the construction side of things? So one of my, I guess, suggestions would be, if you're not familiar with like level of development and, handing models off to downstream partners and giving them right a reliance for that, is start thinking about that. So it's not really a software like it was in 2008 with Revit, but it's really this idea of, okay, designers need to be able to hand off models that are like machine readable and fabrication friendly, and how that can then, how can that lead to innovation with our construction partners?
Thanks.
Yeah, and my comment is a little in line with what Aaron said. I think, if anything, let's look at the integration of the supply chain across the design and facility management systems. And I think the processes that are coming very shortly are going to be highly integrated from the design, fabrication, and management side, and trying to understand how to connect those dots and the flow of the information in a way that is automatic, that there's no loss in the resolution of the information, and that elevate the value of the client. In my opinion, is the next way of operating. Whether that's Revit, it's going to be something else, I don't know. But understand how to talk integration and speak the language of the client needs of the immediate future is going to be a key in the way we reinsert ourselves in the in the market in the future.
Yeah, thanks. Getting a little bit back into our companies, what ways do you communicate inside of your companies? How can you speak a little bit? I'd love all three of us because we all have different companies. Obviously, we're getting close to our end of our time, and so yeah, can you speak a little bit about the different communication channels and ways that you communicate? I know there's probably at least 3 or 5 different ways in each of your companies. Why don't we go Aaron, Ryan, Cesar?
Okay, yeah, sure. So we use Teams predominantly for communication about emerging techniques and certainly projects. We use SharePoint for documentation of standards along with OneNote in the Teams for kind of faster moving things because it's easy just to drop images in or users can update things. And then we actually do a lot of phone calls. So I run like a weekly call with 30 to 50 people, whoever's available to kind of join in. One week it's kind of project manager principal levels where we're talking about something that Atlanta's done and Kansas City's interested in it, whatever. So we're really trying to integrate that. And then every other week it's with the kind of digital natives, as Ryan mentioned earlier, the younger staff, the technical designers and graduate engineers and things that are kind of digitally adept. And there we get a little more into the weeds of the tools. So it's kind of this two-phased approach, but very frequent communication. And a lot of times we're talking about the same things, but different depths that we get into. But it's really about promoting, everybody across the board being knowledgeable about what we're doing.
Yeah. So my comment with that would be try to minimize your communication channels. It gets confusing. So I came from a firm that was experimenting with like Yammer, and this would have been a while back, to adopting Microsoft Teams and Zoom. There were some people in some office, depending on what office you were part of the culture of. We were using Slack, Google Chat, and so I think there was a company-wide initiative to narrow it down to just 3, which was like email, Teams, and Zoom or something, which is still confusing. And so I'm at a new firm, and it's somewhat similar to Zoom Teams kind of thing. We're obviously still using email, but we're trying to figure that. I think we have some GoToMeeting availability as well. So we really need to minimize that because now we're paying a bill for Teams, we're paying a bill for Zoom, we're paying a bill for GoToMeeting, and they all do the same thing. So yeah, that's what we do for now.
Yeah, Cesar, can you speak about some of the channels you've seen?
Yeah, I see like Aaron and Ryan. I mean, these are industry standards channels of communication. We saw Teams get a higher share of the communication, at least at Gensler. But something that is also recently adopted, if we think of communication as a way to express digital ideas, it's the idea of a digital board. In particular, this Miro. If you're familiar with Miro, it's this digital board that allows to collaboratively create ideas, sketches, and capture the historical development of the design over time. And so it enhances the way we've been communicating within the organization, and allow us to very quickly aggregate our contributions during a conversation live. And I think that was a very nice way, a very nice add-on in all this this palette of tools that you guys have mentioned.
Yeah, I've been surprised how much I've enjoyed like using a digital pen when I'm talking to somebody, because then I can actually sketch, and it feels like I can draw something a little bit faster than I can like draw it on Bluebeam or in another application. Thanks, guys. Those are really helpful tips. As we go into our last couple questions, again, if there's more that come in, we'll get to those. But we're going to get to the last couple questions here as far as the ones I've got ready. What changes in Shift as you've been working with the culture, seeing these adoptions happen? Can you speak a little bit? Again, I'd really love all 3 of you to touch on both of these. What has been a really challenging shift or something difficult, and what has been one that's come more easily than you expected? And you can go in either order. But let's go again the same. So Aaron, Ryan, Cesar.
Yeah, I think from the cultural shift, difficult is getting the designers and the engineers out of the mentality that I produce drawings. Drawings are just a view of the model in my view. So, but so many times it's I do drawings, and yes, they're the basis of the contract, but it's really the value is in the BIM, right, and all the information that you can put into the BIM. So that's kind of the hardest part is just that mindset shift. But it's interesting because once a person kind of adopts the new mindset of model-based delivery, about the first, well, maybe the second or third time they deliver a project, they really get it, right? It just clicks with them, and now they want to put more data into the model and more parameters in there, and then you can kind of fail fast and pivot and things like that. So I think once they get it, it actually kind of greases the wheels and becomes much easier for their project teams to implement new advances or new things they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What Aaron said was perfect, and it just go buy The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, because everything you just said is in that book. It's fantastic. So the way I kind of address this is, how do you find a common language to speak to staff? Not down to them, but just how do you find a common language to speak to staff? Because then that's going to make your communication to that culture a little bit easier. I'm trying to find an old presentation that I did that kind of touched on this. I'm going to zoom through it really quick of some questions that I asked on that. And so, culture and what people want to learn about. That's kind of where it feels like this is leading. So I always come back to the question: did you bother asking what people wanted to learn about? And another question would be like, what is your innovation cycle? What value of this shift or changes, or this change you want to make, what value will that change in the upskill process create? And then, of course, how does that fill a specific competitive goal for your firm? And then I kind of come back to, do you even have the space to innovate? And I mean that in like mind space, but also in the physical space to innovate and watch for those shifts. Because that's really what you're asking about, is what shifts in culture and how to watch for those. Is, do you have the space to innovate? Because that's where your shifts are happening, is during the innovation process. So that's, yeah.
Cesar?
Yeah, I would say that great point, Ryan. I think also this environment, an environment that includes bottom up and top down conversation, it's probably the right mix of the environment to promote some kind of ideas. I think I've been in an organization where, for the most part, it's mandated adoption, usually top down. And the hardest part, of the challenging part of that, is that most people just either there's a big portion of there's a segment in the staff that either are dragged into the initiative or completely refused it. And so the most effective environment, in my opinion, is one that develop a digitally friendly culture that make people part of this transformation as well. And so it's not only the corporate firm-wide direction that enable the technology, but it's also the front-end designers who are in touch of the specific measurable problems. We can call them champions, right? Mm-hmm. Who are actually the ones who need to get involved in making risks, be part of conversations that percolate at a high level, that it's collaborative. It's a very collaborative environment, and where there's a continuous sense of learning and unlearning of practices. So, so it's this combination of these two approaches that I think is the right mix.
All right. And now we're going to close with two questions. First, and this came in two ways from Trudot Patel and Kyle Martin. Sorry if I mispronounced your names. But what one tool would you recommend somebody learn? So that's the first question. I want you to all answer these together. And the second, can you tell me about your favorite book? And Ryan, you can tell us about the giveaway when we get to you again.
Absolutely.
Actually, let's go backwards this time. So Cesar, you're going to go first with tool or skill to learn and favorite book. And then Ryan and Aaron, you can close.
So if you're not familiar with Clarity, I would definitely, and you are in a position of managing technology, automation of tasks is the future. It is available to us, and Clarity by Imagineit allow us to schedule tasks, whether that is auto printing, auto exporting, auto uploading, making connection of fragmented sources of information, building those bridges of how information flow back and forth. It's critical. I think it's hasn't been around for a few years already, but I think it's enabling a lot of firms to move beyond the traditional tedious tasks.
All right, thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, I want to step back to the previous question real quick. I wanted a quick little follow-up.
We're really short on time, so
I know, on like shifts and culture and stuff, but ask the women in your office. They're usually a little bit more in tune on that. So that's what I would say. With the panel with like old guys. So thing that you need to learn, Kyle. Come on, you just text me that. So I got off a call with NVIDIA twice earlier today, one on Monday, and I would suggest learning some AI development at some level, some machine learning at some level. I pitched a really interesting idea to them, and we'll get to the book thing in a second. That way we got time.
I think I'll just say something that Ryan mentioned earlier, which is just coding. So whether it's Python or C# or something, just delve into it a little bit, get familiar with it, because that's going to allow you to hack your favorite software. Getting familiar with the APIs there.
Okay. And favorite books?
We're going in a certain order. So tell you what, the one that we're going to give away. So what do we want to do here? We're going to pick from people who repost this on LinkedIn, I think. If it's 10 people, we're going to pick one person. We're going to draw names out of a hat. This is typical of what I do at a conference since I'm.
And we'll take one for each of the book recommendations, and we'll keep it open for 24 hours because some people are going to watch this not live. So we want to keep it open for those people as well. So any of the people in the next 24 hours that post it with what hashtag?
I forgot.
Your Desk University.
Your Desk
hey
University.
Guys, this is live. Your Desk University. Hashtag Your Desk University. And we'll find the top 3, and we'll give each of you one of the books that gets recommended. So what are those books, guys?
So I have a huge list. I hope you share this whole list that I put on our Google Docs thing, but Future Professions, and the book that I would like to give away is called Measure What Matters by John Doerr. It was published in 2018, and that's probably of the 12 books that I've listed here. There's a great one by Julie Dirksen, Design for How People Learn. Dang it, there's a lot of good books here, but Measure What Matters, John Doerr. Boom.
Okay, great. Right, Aaron? Cesar? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would recommend highly the BIM Manager, A Practical Guide for BIM Project Management by Mark Baldwin. Maybe it was released 6 months ago, and it's one of the latest books that really go into a great extent explaining what does it entail to manage projects at a high level. Very well written and beautifully put together.
Yeah, no, I'll say I do a lot of reading of non-AEC material, and the book I'd recommend is Turn That Ship Around by David Marquette. He's a U.S. Navy captain, submarine captain that I saw speak at the 2018 LCI Annual Congress, and he had a really underperforming team, and then led it to the top submarine in the U.S. Navy. But what I think was really applicable in terms of digital transformation, because I hear a lot of times, people say, "Hey, I don't have a Ryan on my team. I don't have a Cesar on my team. I've just got I've got the B team or maybe the C team. I can't do this stuff." And in that book, the captain gives you a lot of leadership techniques on engaging the staff and getting over those humps of not having the A team on your project.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody so much. Thank you so much for our guests. We've already gotten questions that they'd like to see a part 2 out of this, so I might be calling you back for a second part. It's been really helpful, and that's it for our time. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Have a good one, guys.